Hey there, I'm Emily Teague. I'm a portrait and fashion photographer based in Brooklyn, New York, but I'm currently working out of Cape Town in South Africa for the next couple of months. So this gives me the opportunity to work with some pretty locations with near perfect weather versus dealing with winter in New York. To start these next few videos off, we're going to be talking about natural light on location. In the past few years, I've really leaned into mixing strobe and ambient light, but I love to look back at some of my older work and see what I was doing with just natural light and remind myself how beautiful it can be and also how creative I can get with it. We'll go through a few variations of what we can do outdoors with the sun, and along with talking about what I'm looking for with the light, I'll also talk about my settings, posing, angle, etc. And if you have any additional questions or thoughts, be sure to drop me a comment and I will do my best to get back to you. We've got the lovely model Meg helping us out today with modeling, and without further ado, let's dive in.
Okay, so we're here at Clifton Beach in Cape Town. We have Megan as our model. We've got this lovely dress that I think is gonna really work well with this beach setting. And for starters, I'm gonna start working with direct light. So our sun is right up above. It's about 3 p.m. So it's not directly above us. We're not getting any of those dark shadows under her eyes. But we're gonna start with direct light at her, and you can see it's a little tiny bit diffused because the cloud is just starting to come over it. So we have some shadow right down here. She has some shadow kind of contouring her arms. Let's start with this and see how it looks. So, I'll have you back up just a little bit. Right there, perfect. And for settings, I'm at 1/1000 for my shutter, so a lot higher than I would normally go just because this is direct sunlight. My ISO is at 100, trying to keep it low as usual. And I want my background to be kind of in between focus, a little soft, so I'm at 5.6 for my aperture. So let's take a test shot and see how this looks. And then Megan, if you want to turn slightly that way, and then let's have a leg in front. And I'm gonna get low just because I always like my models to look powerful, so I tend to go for a lower angle. We have a lot of clouds behind her. This is looking lovely. It's a little darker than when I took my first test shot, so I'm gonna take my shutter speed and I'm gonna go down to 1/800th. So when we first arrived at this location, we had direct sunlight, it worked perfectly, we had these dark shadows, and then the fog took over completely. So everything around us is now foggy. It's changed quite a bit. So I've changed my settings just to adjust with this. I'm now at 1/500th of a second. My aperture is still at 5.6 and my ISO is still at 100. So I feel like I got pretty lucky because this overhead cloud cover is actually working really well to have this nice soft diffused light. However, it's not exactly what I wanted to show you with this harsh lighting scenario. So as we continue on, we'll see if we can get some harsh light. But things that I'm looking for now with this kind of lighting conditions and with all this fog, I'm making sure that Megan is looking up just because I don't want any of those shadows underneath her eyes. And even though I do like the soft light, the only downside, it's gonna be a little bit harder to get catch light in her eye. So I'm just trying to make sure she's looking up at the sun that we do have, so we get a little bit of light in her eyes. Underneath her eyes isn't gonna get too dark. But it's looking really cool, so I'm happy with these shots. Let's move on to our next one. So we had to run away from the beach because the fog took over, and we went up a large hill and found as much light as we could. And now I have Megan completely in the shade. And so we chose this side of the street because the sun is right about there. So it's hitting that side of the street a little bit more. This is even shade. You can see there's no harsh highlights. Everything looks pretty even and nice on her. I'm looking in her eyes and I still have catch lights coming from the sky, so I'm happy with that. Let's take a test shot. One thing I'm gonna do, Megan, you can stay there. I'm gonna shoot at a bit of an angle, and that way we can get a little bit of the depth going down this street. Beautiful, I'm super happy with this. So my settings, I'm at 1/640. My aperture is at 1.8 because I really want some nice depth of field in the background. And my ISO is at 100. Let's take another test shot. So even as I'm shooting, the lighting is still changing the shade. So I've gone down to 1/400th of a second. My aperture is still at 1.8. And looking at these images, I think they're beautiful. Things that I really like. Again, her hair is dark, but I'm still getting this nice highlight coming in from the light that's coming over yonder. And looking at her eyes, once I have Megan looking up a little bit, we get this really beautiful catch light. There's some of these photos that she's looking directly at me and I love them, but the catch light's not really there. So I wanna be sure that I keep her kind of looking up towards the sky because that's when I'm gonna get that nice light in her eyes. Otherwise it starts looking a little dead, which I don't want. And underneath her jaw, I still have that beautiful, beautiful shadow. There's a highlight on her shoulder that I'm happy with. So as I'm directing, I'm also just gonna be aware of where she's facing. If she starts facing more this way, I'm gonna get more shadow. she starts facing this way, I'm gonna get more light bounced on her. Let's take a few more shots. Some other things I'm looking for, I wanna create as much depth as possible. I love that there's a lot of greenery behind her, but I notice that when I start moving too far to the right, I start getting this no parking sign that's over there, and then I get all this light. And when I'm getting that light, it just doesn't look compositionally as nice to me. My eye starts going over to that light area when I really just want the focus to be on her. So I'm being aware of that. And then again, keeping her eyes kind of up, keeping her shoulders tilted. I like when she tilts her shoulders a little bit over that way. And Megan, if you move your face just a little bit over this way, that looks really beautiful to me. Let's take a test. And then try looking right at me. Beautiful. And so you can see even in these two images where her eyes are up, you get that catch light nice and big versus when she's looking right at me, especially in this eye, it starts getting really dark. The other thing that I'm looking at is her shoulder. This farthest shoulder starts going a little out of focus because I'm at 1.8. Okay, so we drove all around Cape Town and the sun hid most of the time and we finally found it. So now we have direct light. So I'm gonna redo what I did earlier just so you can actually see with proper direct light instead of it being really foggy. But you can see the light is kind of harsh right now. We have these really dark defined shadows. Let's take a shot. And so you can see in here the shadows that we're getting under her jaw, even right here on the side of her face, are really, really dark. And it makes for a really dramatic look. We're also getting a lot of rich colors. So my settings, I'm at 1/1600th. My aperture is at 4.5 and my ISO is at 100. And looking at these images, I love that the focus is definitely on her. The background is a little soft, but you can still see the setting and what's going on. The colors are really rich. There's a lot of contrast because of this lighting. And it's looking really sharp as well. So something that I noticed, Megan, if I have you look completely towards the sun right there, come back just a little bit. You can see, actually turn just a little bit that way, right there, hold that. Look at this area right here. So now there's not as much shadow, but if I want a little bit more definition, and if I want her cheekbone to show more, and just to create kind of a more dramatic look, I can have Megan's face come just right there, hold that. And so now the sun's hitting her, but we're starting to get more of this shadow and we can play with that a little more. So Megan, keep coming with me, right there. And now we've really kind of defined and chiseled her face. So let's see what that looks like. Beautiful. So now looking at this, we're also getting some nice shadows on her dress. Again, it's just really high contrast with this light. So to try for a slightly different look, I decided instead of having the background pretty much out of focus, it'd be kind of fun if I had like the palm tree in focus, just really everything in focus. So I've taken my aperture and I've raised it up to 16. And so of course the image is now really dark, which means I have to take my shutter speed and lower it to 1/160th. And I don't like to often go lower than that just because my hands get a little shaky and I don't want it to be, shaky. So 1/160th feels safe to me. And my ISO, I'm gonna raise up just a little bit. I've raised it from 100 to 160. And that way it's lightening it slightly, but not enough that I'm gonna see any quality difference. So let's take a few test shots and see how this looks. And making sure to get a bit of that palm tree behind her. I can really see the ocean waves behind her now. Beautiful. And then kind of spin a little bit, just slightly. Okay, so next look, unfortunately our sun is still here. I figured I would do something where she's backlit, and looking at her right now, Megan has this beautiful warm highlight on the edge of her hair that I think is gonna show up really nicely. And so I've changed, originally with our last shoot, I had my aperture really high. I've lowered it a ton now because over yonder, there's a bunch of cars, there's some trash over there, and I really don't want that to show up in the photo. So I've gone all the way down to 2.2. And with my shutter speed, I've gone all the way up to 1/2000th. So pretty high. And then my ISO is at 100. Let's take a test shot. And I'm gonna get the sun right behind Megan. Beautiful. I can still see some of the cars. So let's go over just a little bit this way. And I'll come a little bit closer. Beautiful. So I'm shooting at a little bit of an angle to avoid the cars. And I have the sun just kind of creeping over her shoulder, so there's a little bit of flare. But this looks beautiful. I'm gonna play around with this. I'm also getting some of the sun coming through her white dress, which I love. This feels a lot more lifestyle and happier than some of the other looks, so we'll play with this. I feel like the last look was much more fashion and this is much more lifestyle. So we've created some split lighting now. So this side of her is completely lit. This side is completely dark except for a little bit of light that I get on her eye, which I think I'll go back and forth whether I want that or not. But looking at some of these photos that I just shot, I think it's absolutely beautiful where this side of her face is dark and dramatic and we have this side lit up. So just another look, another option. And my settings, I've gone to 1/1000th of a second for my shutter and 4.0 for my aperture and keeping my ISO at 100. So we'll just play around some more with this. So I kind of love this dramatic look where on this side of her face, it's just her eye lit up. And we have these really dark shadows that thanks to my really high shutter speed, I'm keeping them really rich and dark. So this looks like a very dramatic, moody look, especially with like all these rocks behind her and the water. It looks nice and moody. This is more my typical style, so I'll play some more with this, but I'm pretty happy with the side lighting. Okay, so for our last look of the day, it's golden hour. So when we started, our sun was somewhere up there. Our sun is now right over there. We're getting these really long shadows. The thing that I love is it's nice and golden and beautiful. So yeah, let's take a few test shots and see. Also, Megan has taken my jacket because it's getting a little cold out here. So now we have a bit of a grungier, cool look going on too for our last look of the day. Let's take some shots. So for this last look, I have lowered my shutter speed to 1/640th. My aperture is at 4.0 and I'm still at ISO 100. Things that I like, the blue sky behind her is looking really great, especially compared to when she was backlit and my sky was completely white. I'm really loving the color in here. The clouds are looking really good. I like the green grass. And it's kind of, it's creating a vibe. And then of course, her skin just looks like dewy and golden and wonderful. So yeah, I'm really happy with this. And I'm going back for that lower angle, especially because she has this like tougher jacket on. I kind of want to give her some more power. So shooting lower is gonna help. And then for instructions, I'm just having her kind of sway back and forth, looking above my camera. Oftentimes I'll have her look like right over here or right over here, just not directly at my lens. And I kind of like the look that it gives. So we'll play around some more. So that was the final look. I called it a wrap and then I was like, let's play around. And I started shooting with the sun behind Megan and I fell in love with it so much that I'm like, okay, wait, we have to do one more. So what I'm getting right now is a bit of a silhouette effect where Megan's pretty dark, but we have this sun right behind her. Her hair's lit up. So I'm just gonna play around with this. My settings are the same as what they were for my last look. I'm still at 1/640th. My ISO is still 100 and I'm still at f4.0. And yeah, we'll just play around with this kind of like moody end of the day look.
So that is it for this video. Again, let me know your thoughts or questions in the comments. And also let me know what you're interested in learning about, especially while I'm here working in Cape Town. I would love to put more of a focus on shooting outdoors. So if there's anything specific with natural light, mixing natural and strobe, or really anything involving outdoor locations, let me know and I will see you all soon.